Welcome to FineScale Modeler Weekly.
We're glad you're here and we have a packed show for you.
Starting with Tamiya's 1/20th scale Toyota Celica LB Turbo.
This modified car competed in the German sports car championships in the late 1970s.
And this kit represents the original setup as seen in 1977.
This marks only the third time the kit's been available since 1978. Although originally motorized, this is anything but a curbside kit with a detailed engine, head, distributor with wires, manifolds, supercharger, and air cleaner.
It fits into the lower body with molded floor and fuel cell details, seat and controls, roll cage, and driver. Underneath is a steerable front suspension, rear axle and drive shaft that link to the wheels and rubber slicks.
The heavily modified Celica body is split at the hood. There are separate inner door panels, front and rear light panels, and two styles of rear wing. The windows are thin and clear, and the same tree provides lights.
Nicely printed cartograph decals supply markings for two of the Celicas that raced in Germany in 1977, including the one that was victorious in the ADAC trophy race.
Although this isn't the most successful race car in history, it did show that Toyota was serious about competing with longer established manufacturers. It would look great on the shelf next to Tamiya's 1/20th scale Porsche 935s.
Takom delighted plenty of modelers when it released its 1/35th scale M29 Weasel.
You can read Robert Raver's review of it at the link in the description.
The follow-up is here, a 1/35th scale M29C, the amphibious Weasel with flotation tanks fore and aft.
The lower hull with molded frame details receives suspension arms and leaf springs for the 8 bogies and their road wheels. Lincoln length tracks fit around the bogies, drive sprockets, and idlers.
The open-top vehicle's interior, which is on full display, has the side floors and central frame, engine cover, radiator, driver controls, and seats.
The exterior comprises sides, fender skirts, and front and rear flotation tanks. A driver figure is included, and clear plastic supplies the windshield and lights. Photo etch metal gives engine screens, brackets, and more.
Decals and color diagrams give markings for 4 M29Cs, a 255th Infantry Regiment vehicle in Germany in April 1945, a 9th Army Weasel marked with red crosses from the Rhine River crossings in March 1945, a camouflaged Marine M29 on Iwo Jima in March 1945, and an Army vehicle in Korea in 1952.
This new series of Weasels marks the first serious attempt at injection molded kits of the M29 since the venerable monogram kit was launched in 1957.
It looks detailed in the box and should be a good build.
As Eduard continues to expand its 1/72nd scale Messerschmitt BF109 offerings, it's created a BF109F or Friedrich series.
Namely the F2 and F4 as seen in this limited edition dual combo kit, Wunderschöne Neue Maschinen Part 1.
Since it's a dual combo, the kit includes 2 complete airframe sprues, with differences between the variants, especially the shape of the gear wells, wings, and intakes accounted for. Surface detail is terrific with fine lines and rivets throughout.
There are masks for the clear parts, posable flaps and slats, a detailed cockpit, and the usual photo-etched metal we've come to expect from Eduard for the cockpit and exterior. The instructions do a good job of pointing out which options go with which marking options.
Speaking of which, the decals give options for 14 Luftwaffe fighters. An F1 flown by Werner Mulders, CO of Jagdgeschwader 51 in Germany in June 1941. An F2 flown by Lieutenant Jürgen Harder of Jagdgeschwader 53 in Germany in 1941. An F2 piloted by Hauptmann Werner Pichon Kalu vom Hofe with Jagdgeschwader 54 in 1941. Lieutenant Detlev Rohrer's F2 operating with Jagdgeschwader 3 in the Soviet Union in August 1941. An F2 from Jagdgeschwader 2 flown by Richard Uhlbacher in France in summer 1941. Another F2 in France flown by Siegfried Schnell, CO of Jagdgeschwader 2. A whitewashed F2 on the Eastern Front in December 1941 flown by Hans Eckhard Bob with Jagdgeschwader 54. Josef Priller flew this F4 in France in October 1941. An F4 flown by Lieutenant Hermann A. Graf with Jagdgeschwader 52 on the Eastern Front in May 1942. Major Erich Gerlitz's F4 with Jagdgeschwader 53 in Libya in May 1942. An F4 flown by Lieutenant Walter Nowotny with Jagdgeschwader 54 on the Eastern Front in July 1942. An F4 flown by Hauptmann Heinz Bahr with Jagdgeschwader 77 in Sicily in July 1942. An F4 flown in Finland in September 1942 by Hans Dobrik of Jagdgeschwader 5. And finally, an F4 Trop flown by Han Joachim Marseille with Jagdgeschwader 27 in Egypt in September 1942.
As with many of Eduard's kits, this is a beautiful package for fans of the BF 109.
Lastly, we have Italeri's 1/35 scale Semovente L40.4732.
Based on the Italian L640 light tank, this assault gun had a larger gun fitted into a fixed casemate in place of the turret.
It was used in North Africa and Italy during World War II.
The hull builds from several flat panels for the belly, sides, rear, and front. The suspension bogies, road wheels, drive sprockets, and idlers go onto the hull and are wrapped with Lincoln length tracks.
Notably, for a model of this size, it includes a sharp interior with transmission and drive shaft, seats, and controls. The gun has a breech, sight, and its own controls. The engine deck has separate hatches, but no engine is included.
The casemate builds from front, rear, and side panels, and there is a glacis with separate transmission cover. The fabric top for the casemate is posed open.
Decals and color diagrams give 4 marking options: an overall dark yellow Semovente on Corsica in September 1942, a similarly marked vehicle on Sicily in early 1943, a cool camouflage vehicle in 1942, and a German-marked anti-partisan gun in northern Italy in early 1944.
This neat little kit should go together pretty quickly and offer something a little different.
One thing's for sure, Kendra.
What is that?
You won't need a lot of shelf space for it.
That's true. Look for a review of the Toyota on FineScale.com.
A great place to go for all kinds of modeling info, including videos, how-to stories, snapshots, galleries, and the Combat Hobby Store, where you can pick up some great gifts for yourself or the other modelers in your life.
FineScale Modeler Weekly is brought to you by Hobby Zone USA, your source for hobby storage solutions, hard-to-find hobby tools, and aftermarket modeling needs.
We've received a lot of questions about air compressors, what we look for, what we're using at home, that sort of thing. So I brought in the air compressor that I have in my workshop, and I thought I'd just walk you through what I was looking for when I got this one, and talk to you a little bit about the air compressor I had before and what some of the options are out there for you. So first of all, let's start with what are some of the options that are out there for you. You can get really small portable air compressors that don't have a tank. They don't necessarily look like this. They kind of look like they're in a little like cubicle case, right? Very light, very economical, and you can move them just about anywhere that you want. If you think you're gonna do some airbrushing in a hotel room because you're on a trip or something, sure, take it along. The issue with something like that is that it's continually running. So for me, my thinking is, well, if I have something that small and it's continually running and I'm doing a lot of airbrushing day after day after day, how long before that airbrush compressor, it goes the way of the dodo? There is the mid-sized compressor. But before we get there, you can also go with the very large air compressor. And those compressors are more for your industrial work, right? If you're really needing high amounts of air pressure that you're pushing through, say, a spray gun, less on the hobby side, but more on the professional side of things. It's just, for me, a little bit too much, right? I don't need something I don't need to paint a full-size car. Even though maybe I can adjust it down to handle the right size, the right amount of PSI for doing a model. I don't need something that big. So that leaves these sort of mid-range, mid-sized air compressors. Like this one here, the Cool Runner 2. This is what I use at home. So let's go ahead and just run through the specs on this. Before I purchased this particular air compressor and this air tank, I had a Grex air compressor. It was a 1/8 single piston air compressor, and it lasted for about 15 years, which is, I think, a pretty good run. However, while I owned that air compressor, there were a couple of things that I figured out that I didn't particularly like about it. One of those was that because it didn't have an air tank, it was continually running. And anything that continually runs is eventually going to probably wear out faster than something that doesn't continually run. Could that air compressor have lasted longer if it had an air tank? I'll never know because now it's gone. But that was one thing. The other thing was that even though it had rubber feet on it, it wasn't particularly heavy. So it tended to go on a walk every time I was using it. So it wouldn't stick in one place, and it would just kind of rattle around, and I would put it on the floor, and I would try and hem it in. I eventually figured out how to keep it in one spot. I built a little, basically a corral for it, and it kept it where it needed to be. But that was the other thing that I didn't really enjoy about that. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to stay put. I guess I could have anchored it to my workbench, but I didn't want to do that because it would have then been shaking my entire workbench every time it was turned on. So those are two things that really kind of sat with me as I was looking to replace it after it had, well, sadly died. I saw this air compressor and air tank combo online. It was on sale, so that was even better. And one of the things that really attracted me was, first, it was a little bit bigger than what the Grex was. So the Grex was a 1/8 horsepower. This was 1/5. So it's going to do a little bit, more work. And then it also had 2 cooling fans to help it keep it cool. The Grex only had 1, so it would get really, really warm because it was constantly working. So the 2 fans here helped cool this down. Then it also came with this air tank. This is a 3-liter air tank. So what it'll do is it'll kick on and it'll fill this air tank up to about 58 psi. Once it hits 58 psi, it then shuts off, saving on work. As soon as the pressure in the air tank, once I'm using it, gets to 43 psi, this thing will kick back on and bring it back up to 57. And it just self-regulates in there, only kicking on when it needs to, which is nice because, like I say, less work on the machine itself and also less noise. Not that it's terribly noisy, and we'll turn it on here so that you can hear it, but not that it's terribly noisy when it's working, but it's just nice not to always have it rocking out. Something else that my Grex had that I definitely wanted to make sure that I had for this setup, and I didn't want to have to buy it separately, is this regulator with the moisture trap. Well, why do we need a moisture trap, you ask? As the air is condensed and then put into the tank and then released out into the hose, if you don't have a moisture trap, that condensed air is going to bring moisture with it. And then it's going to get into your hose and then into your airbrush and then your paint. And you do not want moisture, water, going into your paint as you're painting your model. You only want paint coming in. So you want that air to be dry. This moisture trap makes sure that the air that's going into your hose is dry. So I wanted to make sure I had that, and then obviously this regulator so that I can know exactly what my air pressure is going to my airbrush. I usually airbrush around between 18 and 20 psi, so I want to be able to regulate that. Sometimes I airbrush a little bit higher psi, sometimes a little bit lower, so it's nice to be able to have that adjustability. This piece here, it can hold 2 airbrushes. But for me, this wasn't a feature that I was necessarily looking for. It just came with the setup. Some people online really love this. I have different airbrush holders for my airbrush. I'm just too lazy to have taken it off. I think we're at the point, though, where we go ahead and we turn this thing on so you can hear what it sounds like as it's filling the tank. So we just come here, we flick this little switch, and not too bad. So just filling the tank. Remember, up to about 58 psi. Exciting stuff for this. We're almost there. I promise. You can hear it. and there it goes. Turns off. Now I have my pressure valve set to 30 psi right now. That's because when I last used this, I was cleaning my airbrush. So that's why it's set a little bit high. But then we can just go ahead and I have a little quick release on the airbrush right here. And there it is. It works. Some of the questions that often get asked is, what should you do once you're done with your project, right? Should you release all the air out of the tank, or can you just leave it? As you might imagine, there are two camps. There's the one camp that says, sure, leave it, whatever, because you can turn this off, you can walk away, and you can come back to your project the next day. All you got to do is turn it on and you still have air pressure. Or if some of the air has leaked out, which will happen depending on how long you wait, it doesn't take nearly as long to refill this thing up to the 58 psi and get going. Then there's the other camp that says, no, you should really take the air out of the tank because there's moisture in here. And what you want to do is get all that air out and let it dry out in there to try and minimize the chances of rust and corrosion inside the tank, which will eventually lead to the tank failing. What side do I fall down on? Safety. Why not? It doesn't hurt me to let all the air out of the tank, and then when I'm coming back, it's just flick it on, go do something else at the workbench while it fills up, and then get to brushing once it is full. So I empty the tank out after every project. To do that, there are a couple of different ways. There are three ways, I think, that I can empty air out of the tank. One is right here. There's this air valve. You can let the air out that way, and it goes pretty fast. You can also come down here for this moisture trap. And this is probably the way that I most often do it because, like the spit valve on a brass instrument, you go ahead and let that out, and that also then lets some of the moisture that has collected in this moisture trap to get out of there. It's like this little needle valve, so it kind of hurts when you push your finger into it, but that's all right. The other way you can do it, if you're in a real hurry, is to loosen the end of this hose. Just make sure that if you go in this direction, you hang on to the end of the hose, especially if there's a lot of pressure in there, because you don't want this whipping around. It could be bad for you. Anyway, that is my setup for my air compressor and air tank in my workshop. Are you interested in the best models of the year? If you are, that's great, and we have you covered, because Contest Cars 2023 is available now. With photos and captions of more than 500 lowriders, gassers, dragsters, muscle cars, pickups, and more, you're going to see not only the winners, but just the best models that are out there. You can order your copy today from KalmbachHobbyStore.com or go to your local hobby store, bookstore, or newsstand and pick it up there. If they don't have it, ask them to order it or order it direct from us. Also coming from FineScale Modeler is our 100-page special issue paint award-winning figures. Inside you will find projects from well-known figure modelers like Joe Hudson, Brian Wildfong, Matt Mrazek, and many more, and it will be available in March. However, you can pre-order it now on KalmbachHobbyStore.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to FineScale Modeler magazine, where you'll get 6 issues a year full of how-to stories from some of the best modelers around the world, and access to subscriber-only content on FineScale.com. Go to this link to subscribe, and you'll get a special introductory offer for our YouTube viewers.
So, it's a brand new year.
2024.
Happy 2024. And we have just wrapped up judging Tim on the second annual Build a
Wrapped
Model.
up judging Tim.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
I'm always judging Tim. So Tim, we've just wrapped up judging
Yes.
the second annual Build a Model Month contest.
Yes.
And
And we're going to announce the category winners, the People's Choice winner, and the grand prize winner right here, right now in this video. So you are in the right place.
Yep, you guys are going to be the first to find out.
So let's start with Aircraft and Real Space. The winner is
Vincent Van Heijs.
for his, and I'm going to check my notes here so I don't get this wrong, 1/72nd scale FS-260M Marchetti Belgian Air Force. There it is. There is the winner.
It's beautiful.
Let's move on.
Next, armor and military vehicles.
Now, I'm going to say this name a couple of different ways because I'm not sure how it's pronounced. So, Metin Sonmez or Metin Sommet.
He had an Academy 1/35th scale Magach 7C Gimel.
Beautiful. Nicely done.
Very nice.
Moving on, we're going to go to figures next.
The winner there is Stephen Simmons.
Stephen Simmons, who entered his figure, Garden Girl.
Next up in the winner's circle, we have the Gundam and Mech category.
And I'm going to do my best with this name, Tsuyu Lo.
They have an FA MTR 025 Samuel Gundam.
This thing is impressive.
There's a lot going on there.
Heck yeah. Coming up next, sci-fi and fantasy,
Where the winner is Mike Nadwidney.
for his diorama called Eagle Pilot Collins in Trouble.
And this is built around the 1/48 scale Eagle from MPC. And so you get a sense of just how big this thing is.
Quite large.
Lot going on there. Next up, ships.
And for the ships category, Glenn Thorne has won.
For his trumpeter 1/350th scale HMS Roberts.
Very nice, very nice. One of our favorite categories, juniors,
Where Solomon Hollowell is the winner.
and he came in with a diorama that he entitled Merry Christmas. And
Again, a lot going on here.
a
There's
lot going on.
Nicely done KV1.
Ambitious for a youngster to attempt.
Yes, ambitious for me to attempt. You guys picked the People's Choice, and the winner there is,
Alvin Chu.
for his Ryefield Models 1/35th scale Panther G, which he has shown all exploded out to show all the interior parts.
It exploded and put together if you go and you look at the gallery.
Yes, very impressive work.
And now, the model we've all been waiting for, the category winner for automobiles and motorcycles, and the grand prize winner for this year's Build a Model Month online model contest is Randy Durr for his 1/12 scale Greenwood Sebring 75 IMSA Corvette. This thing is nuts impressive.
Yes, it really is. I mean, it's one of those things where you start looking at it and you just see more and more and more, and when you realize it's entirely scratch built.
Yeah, the amount of work that Randy put into it, just amazing. So, there are all 8 category winners, the People's Choice winner, and of course one of the 8 category winners is the grand prize winner, Randy Durr. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you to everybody who took part, who entered a model, who voted.
And an especially huge thanks to all of our judges who you are seeing on screen right now. Thank you so much for helping us put this whole thing together. And we would be remiss if we didn't once more mention Round 2, Cult TV Man, and Tamiya for sponsoring this year's Build a Model Month online model contest. Thank you all so much.
And you guys have about 10 months to get cracking on your builds for the next BAMM contest,
That's right.
November 2024.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you all for watching.
We'll see you next time. This marks only the third time, third time. You know what I'm saying?
Takom delighted plenty of modelers when it released its The instructions do a good job of pointing out with my brain just short-circuited.
Piloted by Hauptmann Werner Pichon Kallo von Hofer. Let me try that one again. That is a lot. With Jagerschwader I can get through Jagerschwader, I can't say 77. Since it's now I'm tripping over my...
So, here's my air compressor. Every time I turn it on, it was just right. So that where are we going after this?
Next.
Next, Tim falls apart.
Next up, ships.
And
sorry, did I not put enough emphasis on the P there?